Kubernetes, Greek for helmsman or pilot. Kubernetes is an open source system for automating deployment, scaling, and management of containerized applications.
Just finished my shift at the office, but the day is far from over. I'm doing some evening activities. I'm attending a Docker meetup hosted in the Pocket offices right here in Ghent, where I'll be attending a Kubernetes workshop. All right, let's roll. Hey, a bit of Slayer. Don't mind if I do. Anyhow, containers, as I mentioned, is all the rage, and the ecosystem that is rapidly expanding is very hot, very trendy. Docker, as such, has been a hype for the last 2, maybe 3 years, but now a lot of people are no longer considering Docker a thing they could play around with. It's serious production-ready technology. But the orchestration tends to be a bit more difficult. You had Docker Swarm, you have Apache Mesos projects, you see people using CoreOS, using Fleet, but nowadays you see that the stack is more converging towards Docker itself, running on Kubernetes servers. Very nice place, a nice site. Lots of shops, restaurants, but I need to find that office. Industrial look.
Put together this whole workshop. It's kind of an experiment, so not the first time. We did it last week, but it's still based on the same lecture, same material. And without further ado, that's all for me, and I leave the word up to Benjamin.
Hello everybody. I'm Benjamin. I'm a Linux user since 1996. I've been doing a lot of containers with OpenZ.
Like what you saw? It was a cool event, lots of people, very good atmosphere, and we learned a lot. And that's all thanks to Benjamin. Benjamin is the speaker, the coach, and he has all of it up on his website. As you can see, it's zubab.com/Kubernetes workshop, and it's a nice list of tips and tricks and scenarios that we went through throughout the evening. So let's do some of it ourselves. Now this is the setup that in a lot of cases will happen for you. You'll have a master, and then you'll have different minions. Those are worker servers where you have Docker on it, and where these containers are grouped into pods. It's a bit about the architecture of Kubernetes. It's grouped into pods, and these pods can be run, can be scheduled. When a pod goes down, a new one comes up based on the replica set, based on the definition, and all of this can be exposed to the outside world thanks to services. To keep it simple, for development mode, on my Mac I have a project called Minikube. And it's just a wrapper around it, and it makes sure that I have a single node Kubernetes with all the bells and whistles on it without the hassle. So let's have a look at the code. The example was a Hello World example written in Node.js. When you look at what we've got here, you have a Docker file, you have two YAML files that are configuration files that basically instruct Kubernetes what to do, and finally you have the actual server, the server.js. Let's show you the server. It's just a Node.js typical socket server thing that runs HTTP in this case, and that uses environment variables to expose the host name. The environment variable is set by Kubernetes, so we could just print it out combined with hello world. This is your typical hello world service, in this case running on port 8080. So if we just do nodes and then server.js locally on my laptop, that will work. And if I do curl localhost 8080, that would work fine on my laptop. So what we're doing right now is we're going to be Dockerizing this. Normally I would run this on my local Docker, but there's this thing that Minikube applies, and that's the Docker environment is exposed via Minikube, and by doing eval, the Docker I'm running right here is the Docker that is actually running in my Kubernetes cluster. So I could basically do docker build -t and then call it hello node.js with current folder. It would package all that and it would be in my repository, my Docker repository. And then I could play around with that, do the necessary things. But because we have that image, we can use the deployment file and the service file to actually create something with it. So let me show you my deployment file. And that's nothing more than just a YAML definition. So I'm using a very specific version of the API. We're specifying that this is a deployment that will create a pod or pods, and those pods will contain containers. I'm having two replicas, making sure I have two pods that are replicated. If I would have multiple nodes in my cluster, those will be scheduled elsewhere. I'm calling this the hello Node.js deployment, and the containers that will be built are using hello Node.js, but colon latest, that's the latest version of my container. I'm doing a pull policy if not present, so it won't contact a public registry. It will only do that if it's not locally present. But because I've just built it, it will be there. And then I'm mapping it also to hello Node.js as a name, and the container port that I'll be exposing is 8080, as you'd expect. I could do Minikube dashboard, and I'd get a dashboard where I could deploy it myself. But I will be using the command line tool, so I'll be doing kubectl create -f to mention the file, and then I'll be using hello Node.js deployment.yaml, and we've scheduled it. So our pods will be up and running, as you can see. If we look at the details of the deployment, you'll see that there's a replica set with containers, 2 pods. When I have a look at these are the pods. They're present, they're available. I could run them if I want to, so I could go to the pod details and I'll get an IP. But the next step is not using individual pods and individual containers, but exposing it to the outside world via a service. So again, kubectl create -f, and maybe I should show you the service file first before we dive into the rest of the thing. You can see that it's a service. I call it hello Node.js service. It's of type node port. There's different kinds of types. I won't get into that now. You can find it on the documentation page. But what is important is that I'm exposing it over port 8080, and then I'm selecting the hello Node.js pods, basically, based on that label. So kubectl create -f hello Node.js service.yaml. That is also scheduled right now. That service is going to be created. I can have a look at that. If I go to services, that hello Node.js service is there. And then for the sake of convenience, I could do Minikube service, because there's a VM in between, so I can't natively access these IPs and these host names. So I do Minikube service hello Node.js service, and I could do --URL to get the URL of that thing. So I could just copy that and use it wherever I want. But if I omit --URL, my browser will open and I will see the hello world in my cluster of Kubernetes servers within that pod. So those containers would be scheduled right there. So that's a very, very easy way to get up and running with this kind of difficult setup you'll have to walk through. So Minikube, excellent way to run a full-blown Kubernetes cluster on your local laptop. And it's a great way to get in touch with the technology. So that was that. That was a great workshop. I got inspired, and now it's all about taking it to the next steps, getting to know all the bits and pieces, getting to know how persistent volumes work, config maps work, jobs work, daemon sets work, replica controllers. So much stuff to learn, but the workshop was a very good 101, and I will link the URL of Benjamin's workshop below. Thanks for checking it out. It was a good workshop.